Alrighty, folks, let's talk about destroying that document-based question. 14 steps to writing a strong document-based question, a strong DBQ in IB history. This is going to be paper one. Paper one is a DBQ. You need to know how to do a DBQ. If you cannot do a DBQ, you cannot, and I repeat, cannot do well on paper one, which would not be good. So let's figure out how to destroy that DBQ. Step number one, identify keywords and task. You need to read the prompt and you need to look for your task word. Task words are things like analyze, evaluate, compare, and contrast. This is simply telling you what you need to do. What is the task that you have to do? The first thing you need to do is you need to identify and find those keywords, those task words. I highly recommend actually going through and either like circling them or underlining them when you get the prompt, simply so you know that you this is what you're going to be doing. You know what you're looking at, and you make sure you hit it hard. You then need to look for keywords. These are things that are going to point to the era or the event you are going to discuss. Okay, this is going to be terms like the 18th century. So if we're talking about the 18th century, we know that we are going to be in that time period. So make sure you're talking about that. Okay, it's not the 1800s. It's going to be the 1700s. So make sure you understand that. It's going to be places like in Germany. So we know we're going to be talking about Germany. This is going to point you to the certain things that you are going to be discussing. Okay, so make sure you're looking at the keywords. So you're talking about events that are relevant to what the question is actually asking. And then look at the past. Okay, the past stands for the purpose, the audience, the scope, and the type. So what is the purpose of this essay? Why are you even writing this? Audience, who are you writing this for? Scope, what are you talking about? Okay, what's the scope of this essay? If you're talking about the 1800s, or the 18th century, excuse me, don't be talking about the 1800s because that's not correct. Okay, make sure you're writing about the correct scope and the type. What type of essay are you writing? Okay, are you writing an argumentative one? Are you writing an analytical essay? You need to understand the past when writing a history DBQ. Okay, you see what I did right there. Number two is you need to review the documents. So carefully look through all the documents and summarize them briefly. By this point, you already know what you're looking for based off your question. You need to understand the documents. So summarize your documents briefly. What I recommend is just simply kind of jotting down some keywords on top, or somewhere next to where that document's at, so you know exactly what is being said in this document. So if you look right here, this is going to be document 7. Source is a proclamation by the Young Turks in 1908. There's 2 different things mentioned right here. 3, it will be demanded that all Ottoman subjects have completed their 20th year, regardless of whether they possess property or fortune, shall have the right to vote. And then number 9, every citizen will enjoy complete liberty and equality, regardless of nationality or religion, and be submitted to the same obligations. All Ottomans, being equal before the law as regarded rights and duties relative to the state, are eligible for government posts according to their individual capacity and their education. Non-Muslims will be equally liable to the military law. So we're reviewing these documents right through here. We're going to figure out what's being said. So first and foremost, this document 7 is talking about the right to vote or suffrage. Okay, we're seeing that right through here. We're also seeing that religion and nationality should not determine your freedom according to document 7 right through here. So if I were to be doing this DBQ, just like you see these little notes right above here, I'd be writing next to document 7, like suffrage, because I know that suffrage means the right to vote, religion, nationality, not determining your freedom. Because that's kind of the overlying theme going on right here. So we're understanding what's happening here. Now, if you go ahead and write it off to the side like this, you don't need to read the document again necessarily when you're trying to do some steps later on, which I'll talk about in a bit. But you're going to know exactly what you need to be talking about, where it's going to be at, and you're going to know what your documents are about. Number 3 is annotate that source for details. What comes to mind as you look at each source? So what's the first thing that comes to mind based off of your prior knowledge as you are looking at each source? Write those off to the side. And how does this source connect to the other sources in the document? All the sources connect in some way. So you need to figure out how they connect. And that's going to be up to you to really build that map and connect these sources together. What outside information comes up as you're looking at these different sources? Okay, so if we're looking right here at document 7, once again, we know that this comes out in 1908. So it's 1908 in the Ottoman Empire. We know at this time period, the Ottoman Empire is in trouble. Using our historical background, we know the Ottoman Empire is going to get involved in World War I, and that ultimately they're going to crumble as a result of the end of World War I. So we know that there are trouble going going on in the Ottoman Empire. We also know the British keep taking Ottoman lands, particularly coming into Egypt and up into Palestine, and that they want more. So the Ottomans are threatened by the British, and they're threatened by outside powers. We know the Young Turks, which is a group going on in Turkey, Ottoman Empire at this time period, they want to take over. Okay, they don't like the way the Ottoman government is moving. They're coming to power, and they want to continue to come to power, and they're really opposed to what's going on with the Ottomans. The non-Muslims are treated poorly, and this is something that is really important to understand when you're talking about this time period in the Ottoman Empire. And we're also going to know that as we're looking through here, okay, as we're going through this, we've already read other documents. We're going to realize that this document is similar to document 1, 4, and document 9. So right now we're kind of trying to group these sources together, group these different documents together. Okay, so we're going all that right through here. We're going to be knowing that now. Now, step number 4 is categorize the sources. What side of the issue is this source on? Okay, is it in favor of the issue being discussed, or is it opposed to the issue being discussed? So make sure you understand that. We're looking at this one right here. We know that this document is in favor of the Young Turks. Okay, it's a proclamation by the Young Turks. So if we're looking at a question addressing the Young Turks in some way, we know that this document is going to be in favor of them. So we can relate it to, it can automatically compare and relate to the other documents that are written in favor of the Young Turks, as opposed to the documents that might be opposed to what's going on within the Young Turks. So we understand that right through there. Number 5 is bring in information. Okay, so how do the documents mentioned relate to what you already know? What other sources can you think of that you've learned in your previous study of the content that relates to the question that's being asked or relates to these sources? As you read something, what comes to mind? What other events can you relate to what's going on in these sources? Like we looked at previously with the Ottoman Empire, okay, we're talking about the Young Turks in 1908. Some other events we can talk about is, for example, the Anglo-Egyptian War, where the Egyptians really came into Egypt and took control of Egypt, which was previously an Ottoman-controlled territory. So we're understanding different events like this, and this is going to really lead to the British getting involved in the region. So we can kind of talk about that. That's why the British or the Ottoman Empire is starting to struggle. One of the many reasons the empire is starting to struggle. So we can relate these different events right through there, be able to relate those events together, and you're going to be in a much, much better position. Also, you need to add background knowledge. That's going to increase the scope. Now, this is done for a number of reasons. Number 1 is going to help you have a more full and complete essay document-based question. And number 2 is going to show the examiner that you actually know what you're talking about. It's not really recommended if you're going to just come in and kind of BS your way through this situation. You need to know exactly what's being discussed from the start. You need to know your content. So if you can add scope to this, you're going to know exactly what's going on, and the examiner is going to know that you know what you are talking about. And then step number 6, you need to develop an argument. You need to pick a side to argue. DBQs are going to have sources from both sides of the issue. Okay, you're not going to have a DBQ ever that's going to be just middle of the road sources. It's going to have information on both sides of the issue. You need to look at the bias that each source is presented with, and you need to come up with an argument on one side of those. Okay. You need to keep debater's mindset. Remember, debater's mindset is that belief that you are always right, no matter what anyone says. This will not change. You need to keep debater's mindset when you are writing a DBQ, or really any essay in history for that matter. You need to be sticking to your argument, and you need to hit the reader over the head that you are correct and you know what you are talking about. Do not try to straddle both sides of the fence on something like this. You need to show that you understand both sides of the issue and understand where the other side's coming from. But when you are making an argument, you need to explain why your side is correct. Okay, you need to be able to do that, and you'll do a lot better. You need to write down your basic argument. Now, this needs to be simple and simply to the point where you're kind of giving yourself some argument of what's going on. You know where you're going to be going with the essay. Number 7, you need to look for a perspective. Okay, why might this source feel that way? So if we're going to be talking about the Ottoman Empire, for example, and we're going to be reading something about the Armenians, okay? The Armenians, we know about the Armenian genocide, are going to be very, very opposed to what's going to happen in the Ottoman Empire. So they're going to have a lot more harsh words towards the Ottomans than someone who was maybe one of the pashas, okay? So we're going to need to understand that right through there. Look for the perspective and understand why that source might feel this way, and why did this source have this point of view, okay? Think about the background knowledge of the author. As I like to say, and you probably heard me say this if you've been in my class before, knowing that dead people don't talk. Okay, we cannot have a conversation with a dead person. You can, but it's going to be a one-sided affair. So looking back at different sources, we can actually kind of understand what these people thought at this time. It's the closest we'll ever get to really having a conversation with a dead person. So we got to understand their point of view. We got to figure out kind of why they thought this way and get some background knowledge in there as well. Think about the background knowledge of the author. If we're having someone talking about the Holocaust, that happened in Germany, and they survived the Holocaust, but their entire family was murdered by the Nazis, they're probably going to have a different opinion on what happened than a historian who's writing about this 30 years later and was not a part of the Holocaust. They're not really affected by the situation at all. So think about the background knowledge of that author as well when you're looking at the different sources. So we, again, having this same source right through here, thinking about the background knowledge of the source. This is coming from the Young Turks. The Young Turks feel disenfranchised by the Ottomans. They're primarily young, forward-thinking men, so we know that's going to be happening right through here. They want to bring their country to glory. They do not feel the Ottomans are doing that. They want to bring freedom to their country. They do not feel the Ottomans are doing that. And this is very similar to the United States Constitution. They're going to have some of the kind of the same mindset the framers of the U.S. Constitution had at that time back in 1787. So looking back here, we're looking at the point of view. We're going to figure out why the author felt this way, and think about the background knowledge that that author would have had when they wrote this. Now, you need to create a rough thesis for step number 8. What are the 3 main points you want to argue? Make this short and simple and to the point. We're going to talk about this, this, and this, Just jot it down right through there. At this point, don't worry about making it sound good. Simply worry about getting something written so you know where you're going to be taking this. Remember, when it comes to history, your last-ditch thesis is going to be political, social, and economic. When you're talking about anything in history, you can talk about the political aspects, the social aspects, and the economic aspects, and at least do decent. So the last ditch, if you can't figure out what you're going to be talking about, talk about political, social, and economic impacts of an event. You're going to be at least safe. Number 9 is going to outline your argument. So you need to create an outline. Your outline needs to be simple. It needs to be bullet points, and you need to pace yourself. Do not spend 15 minutes creating an outline because you're not going to have time to fully write the essay. So you need to do this simple, to the point, and then you need to follow your outline and show you why right through here, Your outline is going to look something like this. Simply give me a thesis. Your thesis, this is going to be the 3 points. Argument 1, 2, and 3. Next you're going to do argument 1, 2, and 3. Your evidence, which is anything that's going to be backing that up, that's going to be coming from your sources and outside information and the analysis. So what? Why do I care that you just wrote this? That's where you need to put that right in there. Conclusion, where you need to summarize your entire argument. Basically just restate your thesis, but in a different way, On here, I wouldn't really worry about necessarily on your outline writing a full conclusion. Just kind of jot something down like restate thesis differently so that you remember what you need to be doing. And this is really where you're going to be getting the meat and potatoes of your essay, so to speak. Now, number 10, you need to cite the documents into the outline. So we have our outline right through here. We know what's happening, boop, 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 as you can see right through here. Now we're looking at our sources. Document 1 is going to support argument 1, or document A is going to support argument 1. Document B, it's not going to support anything else right through there, so we're just going to write down doc A here. So we know that when we're talking about argument 1, we need to cite document A somewhere. We're going to look at document B. It's not going to help argument 1, but it's going to help argument 2. We're going to throw it in right through here. It's also going to help argument 3, so we're going to put it right through here. Look at document C. Document C is important, but it's not going to be something we're really going to use to help us write our essay. And that's important. You need to understand that you don't necessarily need to use every document. Use as many documents as you can, but you do not need to use every single document. So if we're looking here, document C really doesn't help with argument 1, 2, or 3. We're going to not talk about it really in this essay. So we're going to get rid of it right through here. Document D is also going to support argument 1 and argument 2, and it's also going to support argument 3. This is probably a fairly important document, so we're going to make sure to really cite document 3, or document D, a bunch, Document E is going to support argument 3, document F is going to support argument 1 and argument 2. Document G, again, isn't really going to help us much, so we're going to toss it out, and then we're going to have this right through here. So we're going to know that when we're talking about argument 1, we need to cite document A, D, and F. When we're talking about argument 2, we need to cite document F, B, and D. And when we're talking about argument 3, we need to cite document D, E, and B right through there. Number 11 is you need to refine your thesis. Go back, plug your thesis into the template. So the template, which I've talked about before, something does something because of reasons, something does something, or although opposing evidence, reasons show something does something. So if we're looking right here, the reasons, or the something is puppies. What do puppies do? Puppies chew. Why do they chew? because they're teething. So we can also put this thing right through here, put the same color because of the reasons. The reasons is they're teething. Something is puppies. What do puppies do? Puppies chew. Although they seem annoying, the reasons, which is they're teething, show puppies, the something, does something. Chew right through here. Now, what I would recommend on this one is when it comes to your conclusion, okay, just quick little thing to note, a little bit of an aside, but that's okay. If we use puppies chew because of their teething, that first one for our thesis statement, our conclusion, we're going to want to say something like, because they're teething, puppies chew. We're simply restating the thesis in a different way. It's going to really help you wrap up your paper in a good, strong way. So make sure you kind of are understanding that right through there. Okay, so thesis statement's important. Number 12, draft that essay. You need to give it some form of hook. You need to get the reader interested. Don't spend a bunch of time writing your hook because that's really not the most important part of your essay, but you need to have a hook. Summarize background information, define the key terms, and restate the question. So what are the key terms you're talking about? If you're going to be writing about suffrage, you need to tell us that you know what suffrage is. Otherwise, you're not going to do as well in this essay as you could. You need to restate the question so that you know what you're talking about and the reader knows that what you're going to be answering. And you need to give your thesis. Something does something because of reasons. Puppies chew because they are teething. You need to then write your body paragraph, demonstrate how the evidence is going to connect to the thesis, and you need to cite your documents. According to document A, blah, 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 document B states blah, 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 or like give the quote that's in document C and then cite in parentheses or brackets document C, something like that. Conclusion, you simply restate your thesis. Although they seem annoying because they're teething, puppies chew, right through there. Number 13, proofreading, okay? Look over your writing. Okay, so you've looked over your writing, you know what's happening. You need to check for errors and make sure that you didn't screw something up, okay? If you are talking about, for example, the 18th century and you're talking about the 1800s, that's going to be an error. You need to make sure you fix that because that's going to be problematic and that's going to hurt you on your essay. Make sure the evidence is present, okay? So if you go through and you realize you didn't talk about any sources on a document-based question, that's going to be problematic. Make sure you don't do that, okay? These are simple ways you can save a lot of points. You need to refine if needed. So if you realize you made a mistake, you need to fix it. Do that during your proofreading step. Number 14 is check your facts, okay? Make sure that your facts are correct. Incorrect facts will hurt you, okay? Incorrect facts will hurt you. This is not the Soviet Union with Soviet propaganda techniques where you just state false information so many times people start believing it is truth. You need to state correct facts or you are going to be in a bad position. Make sure you don't contradict yourself. If you say one thing one way and then the next paragraph you say something that's totally different, that's going to destroy your paper. Do not do that. Make sure you do not contradict yourself. And all facts must point to your thesis. If your facts don't point to your thesis, you are in a bad position. Okay, whenever you write something, you need to have the thought in your mind, how does this prove my thesis? If it does not prove your thesis, do not put it in your essay. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. Comments down below. Good luck. You got this. See you later.